It's not possible that these two lovely children have scared you, is it, Thomas? He said, looking at the boy with a small grin on his face. No, I'm sure they didn't. Perhaps you are just tired. You've been working out in the sun all day. We both have. Why don't we all go inside and get some dinner? They do look a bit worn from traveling all day. Sara saw James frown a little at that statement. There's dust on your clothes, and you look so tired. The man watched James closely. James nodded, obviously satisfied with his explanation. After all, this man looked so nice. Sara looked at Thomas once more. The look of fear was gone from his eyes now. It was replaced by a look of uncertainty. Slowly, he followed them into the house. The house was just as neat inside as it had been outside. A fire crackled merrily in the fireplace, and Sara could smell a delicious something cooking in the pot there. The nice man settled them at the table and gave Thomas instructions to give Sara and James some of the stew from the pot. Thomas carried 2 bowls to the pot and spooned a little of the stew into each. He began to speak to Sara and James as he did so, deliberately slowing his movements. Who are you and how do you happen to be all the way out here by yourselves? He asked as he dribbled some more of the stew into the bowls with his work-roughened hands. He moved rather gracefully for a large boy. Sara estimated that he had to be close to 6 feet tall. She guessed his age to be around 16 or 17 at the most, and he looked strong, like he was used to a lot of physical activity. He looked like an average farm boy, or what she imagined one should look like. I am James and this is my friend, Sara. James eyed the tasty mixture being ladled from the pot. We are on our way to town. We were hoping to meet a friend of ours along the way. He paused to smell the delectable aroma of the stew again, and his stomach began to rumble loudly. The sound made the man chuckle. He was watching Sara and James closely, almost too closely. Sara began to feel more than a little uncomfortable, sort of like a lab rat in a controlled experiment. She turned her head slightly in his direction in order to speak, but found him staring at her with such intensity she became nervous and forgot what she was going to say. Her mouth went dry and a small chill went down her spine. But then, her fears were calmed by his warm smile and a reassuring pat on her arm. Please excuse me. James's face turned a deep shade of red with embarrassment. We have been traveling for a while now, and we are so hungry. Don't give it a second thought, young man. We are happy to share our meal with you. Now, Thomas, I'm sure they're hungrier than that. Let's not be stingy, he said, noticing the small amount of the thick mixture the boy had put into the bowls. Thomas poured stew to the top of the bowls, and with great effort, carried them to the table. He stumbled a little and some of the stew spilled out on the floor. Thomas, the man said gruffly, a heavy scowl on his face. For a moment, it seemed to Sara that his appearance changed a bit. There was a darkness about him, and he did not seem so handsome. Then she blinked, and he was smiling again, all kindness and light. Here, Thomas, let me help you, the man said sweetly, as he took the bowls from Thomas and placed them in front of Sara and James. Sara looked questioningly at Thomas. His eyes were as wide as two saucers. He seemed to be trying to tell her something, but she wasn't sure what. Sara started to bring the spoon to her lips when, without warning, the spoon flew from her hand and the bowl slid off the table of its own accord. She noticed that James's dinner had done the same. "Get out of here quickly!" Thomas yelled suddenly, as all of the kitchen utensils began to fly from their racks and hurled themselves at the man. "You will pay for this!" came the enraged cry, as the man tried vainly to protect himself from the flying metal bowls and pans that were hitting him. His hands flew up to cover his head as a large mixing bowl made contact with his arm, making a dull thumping sound.